It's been a crazy week, but Norwich City are now just one win away from winning the championship title. Promotion already in the bag, back to winning ways, but there is far more going on than just within Norwich City circles at the moment. With the emergence of the threat of the Super League, we are joined by Canaries Trust Chairman Robin Sainty to hear all about their work and an important time for football overall. But of course, we will be getting stuck into that 3-1 win at QPR, which was so important to this week to start with. Welcome to this week's edition of the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast. Dave Freezer here alongside Robin and Connor Southwell as ever. You can also hear us on Future Radio 107.8 FM. And let's kick off with, I just wanted to run through a few things really. Connor, you've had your sponsored silence this week for 24 hours. The TNC boys also did their 24-hour sort of live video on YouTube. So well done to them. They've raised about 20 grand, haven't they? And you raised loads of money for your cause. So that there's been that sort of nice fan element going on. And you might be able to see, for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, that me and Connor have both got this new club special edition shirt hanging behind us. Robin, if I come to you on that to kick off with, which has been revealed this morning on Sunday, this it's a really nice idea, really nice concept to start with. In terms of the actual look of it, I quite like it. Maybe it was one that was perhaps better in the mind than it is actually turned out to be, but I still think it's really nice and unique.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit too busy for me, but it's the thought behind it. I think it's a great gesture by the club. The fact that they've knocked it out at such a low price, and they're still giving £5 per shirt to the Atmosphere Group, which is going to have a tremendous effect on the atmosphere at Carrow Road next season. So, yeah, full marks all around, I think.
And Connor, you were our catwalk model again this morning on Facebook to reveal another Norwich City shirt. What was the sort of feedback you were getting? I've sort of seen a bit mixed, but I think most people are pretty positive about it.
Yeah, probably not the best person to be modelling it, to be honest. But yeah, I think most people understand the sentiment behind it, don't they? And it's been for all I've seen met with a lot of praise. Again, I think the word I used when I first saw it was funky. But yeah. I think in terms of the sort of sentiment and the messaging, particularly with everything that's gone on this week, I think a lot of people are just really appreciative that the club have sort of shown this gesture to them. Obviously, it's very difficult at the moment with people having to stay at home and not be allowed in Carrow Road and behind closed doors football. And it just helps, I think, for me with that sort of connection element to it and bringing the fans closer to the club again. So, yeah, a really nice idea. Funky shirt, but I think it's one personally that's grown on me a little bit.
The timing has worked out brilliantly, because obviously this is something the club will have been working on for quite a while. So fair play to them. That's nice. It feels like a nice sort of community spirit behind everything. But ultimately, Robin, the big thing has been getting back to winning ways at QPR, isn't it? How concerned were you after the Watford game about the title? They were still 5 points clear. You're still pretty comfortable that they would get back on track?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously nobody likes to see the side lose two in a row, but I think there were mitigating factors in both cases. I mean, I think we'd have taken Bournemouth to the cleaners had we not had the red card. So you can write that one off. Watford just wanted it more than we did. It was, but they had to win. We didn't have to win. We'd been celebrating. Yeah. I think my concern was the whole sort of momentum issue. Anybody who played the game knows that it's very, very difficult to pick up momentum once you've let it slip. So that was a concern, and clearly Watford were on a high. I expected Watford to beat Millwall yesterday, and I thought it would be a tough game at QPR, but we made it a little bit more difficult than it needed to be. But in the end, it was a pretty comfortable win.
Yeah, it was a response. I mean, Daniel Farke described it as we responded in style, and they created a lot of chances, didn't they, Connor? When you think about just for one example, Kieran Dow, he had 4 attempts on goal. He set up that big chance for Pookie. They played really well at QPR, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. And it's that word, isn't it? Response. I think they did need to show that after the week they've had. And it's a rare position. And like Robin says, there was plenty of mitigation. I maybe didn't view it in the same way that some supporters did as a window into the Premier League because, and I mentioned this, I think, in a show earlier this week, if you look back at that season 2 years ago, I think they beat Aston Villa twice and yet lost them both times in the Premier League. So what does it really mean? I just don't think you can view it in that way. But this was, I think, what we wanted to see because 3 defeats then would have been a concern. And like we said, this time there were no excuses. There were no sort of celebrations eating into preparation or anything like that. They had to go out and perform and stamp their authority again. And they did that. I think it took them a little while. They grew into it a little bit. Still in the first half, there were probably a little bit of lack of precision, maybe I'd describe it, in terms of some of the passes and some of the touches. But very comfortable in the end, minus that sort of little spell in the second half where QPR brought Charlie Austin and Albert Adoma on. So yeah, a really good performance, a good response, and it just shows, doesn't it, when they're at their level and they're on it, they're better than anyone else in this league, and by quite a comfortable margin as well, because you've got to consider QPR were third in the form table as well. So it's not like that they've rocked up to some mid-table team who are on the beach. I know mathematically they couldn't get into the playoffs, but Robin spoke about momentum there. I think they would have been keen to take that into next season. So yeah, a big win. I think that's pretty much the title now, isn't it? And it was important in the grand scheme of things, because if they'd have dropped points again yesterday, then I think we would have been having that conversation about maybe a slip up and Watford catching up in a bit more depth. So an important win gives them a little bit of breathing space and just calms everything down and allows people to celebrate again.
Yeah, can I just jump in on something that Connor said there about the people reading the rooms from the fact that we were doubled by Bournemouth and Watford. Bournemouth lost to Brentford yesterday. We beat Brentford. It's the championship. This is what happens, and the reality is that we're going to have a different side out there in the Premier League. So what happens this year has no real bearing on what happens next year.
No, and as you said earlier, there's a lot of context around those games as well, aren't there? So I don't think you can read anything too hard into it. What's interesting going forward, we're recording ahead of Reading playing Swansea. So if they don't win that, then their playoff hopes are over as well, although they're already looking very slim. And even a win today might not be enough. But Barnsley are pretty much certain to be in the playoffs now. So there's a good chance, Robin, that both of these final 2 games are against teams with nothing really to play for. So it might have actually set up quite nicely. But, we're on 93 points, and from what we saw yesterday, I think the vast majority of Norwich fans will be confident that they're going to get it over the line now.
Yeah, I would expect us to win the last 2 games, to be honest. I think, Barnsley are a decent side who've had a good run, but, I think that they're running out of steam a little bit at the moment. I don't think the pitch over there suits us terribly well, but it's going to be rather different to the FA Cup game, which was a bit of a mud heap. Obviously, things will have dried out by now. But yeah, I would expect us to win the last 2 games.
And crucially, probably as well, Watford play Brentford and Swansea. So, they haven't got, they've got decent opposition, even though, Swansea might still have something to play for. Brentford, of course, are already in the playoffs and can't make the top 2. So it's going to be interesting. One thing that promotion has sort of fired the starting pistol on, Connor, is transfer rumours, isn't it? We've all of a sudden, as expected, it is going to be a hectic summer on that front. We've got another couple arrived over the weekend. The Daily Mail saying that Villa are looking at Todd Cantwell as a possible Jack Grealish replacement. The Sun saying Nottingham Forest defender Joe Worrell. There's been a few already, haven't there?
It's been a hectic start, hasn't it? And I think probably what we all expected. I think for me, the probably the positive aspect is that this has arrived now once promotion's done and the title's nearly clinched, and not 2-3 weeks ago when maybe it would have had a bit more of a profound impact. Certainly the Aaron stuff that's emerged this week, as we understand it, no contact from West Ham. Daniel Farke confirmed on Friday that they certainly weren't in advanced talks with anybody. So it's just part and parcel of it, isn't it? And thankfully, hopefully, as Todd Cantwell spoke about in the interview he did with the club podcast, hopefully those players have learned how to deal with that speculation now and can maybe keep themselves sort of separate to it. But yeah, it's not particularly helpful. Nobody likes to see Norwich City's best players get linked to a move away, but it's a reality, isn't it? And what I would caveat that is by saying that quite frankly, these clubs in the Premier League wouldn't be doing their job if they weren't scouting Emi Buendia, Max Aarons, Todd Cantwell. It would be a travesty, really, and you'd question their scouts over maybe where they're looking and why they aren't coming across these talents. So it is a difficult one for Norwich. It is part and parcel of it. They should hopefully be used to it now. And yeah, I don't see too much in anything really that we've seen so far. To be completely honest, maybe the Mets centre back that got linked with a move to Norwich. I think France is obviously a market they're going to look at because of the Claps TV deal and the financial opportunities that will present. But yeah, in terms of the outgoings, Everton clearly would be an attractive proposition, I think, if there was money put on the table, but we're not at that stage yet. And yeah, it's just a case, I think, for Norwich fans to treasure these players while they're here and equally know that. I remember when James Maddison left and people going, well, how do Norwich replace him? And then suddenly an Argentinian rocks up from the Spanish second division. So contingency planning will be in place regardless of what happens. And is it a shame? Yes, but equally that there'll be someone else, and we know this is always the case with Norwich. So I wouldn't worry about it too much at this stage, if I'm being completely honest.
Well, it'll be very interesting. We'll keep you up to date with all of that, of course, at PinkUn.com. But we'll park it just for the moment because I think we'll talk about transfers and whatever for a lot this summer, and once the games are out of the way. But before we dive into the QPR game properly, Robin, one thing I did want to mention was the really good work from the fan groups involved in those messages that were left at Colney for. So when they went back to training on Monday morning, they had these lovely little cards with individual personalised messages for each player. So I think that's along come Norwich and Barkley, and Norwich did that. Yeah. What did you make of that? That seemed like another really nice idea, which has just fed into this sort of fan-based week almost.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, we're really lucky at Norwich. We've got a whole range of fan groups who've all got sort of different roles and do different things and bring different things to the party. And we enjoy working with the other groups out there. Hopefully they enjoy working with us. And there's some great work being done. You've got that. You've got the Talk Norwich charity thing, the thing that Connor did. It's wonderful. This is such a community club, and we should be so proud of what we have here. And you have to say that a lot of that is down to Delia and Michael and their ownership. And the way they want the club to be, but it runs all the way through the club. It runs through Stuart Webber, it runs through Daniel Farke, it runs through Zoe Ward, Ben Kensel. There are a lot of great people at this club doing great things.
Certainly a lot to be proud of this week. Right, let's get stuck into the QPR game then. And unchanged team, Connor, but Xavi Quintilla. If you don't shoot, you don't score, but a terrible piece of goalkeeping.
Yeah. I'm not sure it helped him to be playing in a mask, to be honest. It certainly wasn't a Superman mask, was it? The way he juggled that ball. But yeah, you almost feel sort of sympathy with the goalkeeper when that kind of happens. He just almost sort of went straight through him, didn't it? It was very bizarre, both in person and on replay. But really good for Xavi Quintilla. I think maybe you could see, I think, the adulation of his teammates, and obviously went to celebrate with some of the substitutes as well. And he's clearly someone that has a good impact in the dressing room, irrespective of maybe not playing too much football this year because of injuries and various things. And yeah, good to see him get on the score sheet as well. I think you've got to be pleased for him because he's a very likeable chap, I think, just the way he is. And as a footballer, there's clearly talent there. Do I think he fits into a Daniel Farke side? Not particularly, compared to with Dimitris Giannoulis. I think Norwich almost have to change the way they operate those fullbacks, but it's clearly a good player there. He's played in La Liga. He's not some unknown from wherever. He has got talent, and I think we've seen that in glimpses this season, and especially going forward and kind of his deliveries and his attacking output. So it was good to see him have a shot. It was good to see Norwich City have a shot, I think, from outside the area for a change, and it was good to see one end up in the back of the net. So yeah, it was a good goal at an important time, I think. And what was it, Emi Buendia's 16th assist of the season, which is just staggering, really. So all round, plenty to be positive about. Good for Quintilla, particularly given that he's possibly going to get a little bit of a run to end the season, and that this may be his last run in a Norwich shirt. So if it is, what a way to bow out by winning the title.
Yeah, Robin, what have you made of Kintier? I mean, obviously he's had a bit of bad luck, hasn't he, with the injury, and he had a COVID diagnosis in January. But in general, sort of my look on it is similar to what Connor said there. But the biggest issue for me is defensively. He just doesn't seem to have picked up the rhythm and the strength required in the game, because you look at a couple of the early, even the goal, the QPR goal, there's too many crosses coming in from his side at the moment. He doesn't have that physicality that Yanulis has, but he's probably a good player for someone, isn't he? It just doesn't quite feel like Norwich.
Yeah. I think he struggles in the system that we play. The pressure on the fullbacks in our system is tremendous, and it's very difficult for a player to be in and out in the way that he has, particularly in a successful side as well. But yeah, he's much better going forward than he is defensively. But he lacks pace that Giannoulis has, but he also doesn't read the game as well. You look at Giannoulis's interception record, the number of times he steps into space and picks off a pass. Is quite incredible, and we've looked much stronger defensively with him in there. But even so, there have been occasions when he's been left one-on-one and struggled a bit. I remember Mwamba against Brentford caused him a few problems. It's very, very difficult, and unless there's cover from the midfield, it can be very, very lonely for our fullbacks in the system that we play.
Yeah, it can. There's a lot expected of them, as we know from Max and Jamal in the past. Daniel Farke certainly does demand a lot of them. Let me bounce back to you, Robin, as well, and just give you the first opportunity to eulogise about the number one again, that man, Tim Krul, who, Norwich fans absolutely love him now, don't they? He must be up there with the Norwich City goalkeeping greats, of which he's got some great competition to sort of force his way into. But once again, just like the Rotherham away game, his penalty save absolutely crucial to a win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once he quits football, he's got a career as a psychiatrist if he wants it, because his ability to get into players' heads is amazing. You could see that he completely freaked Dykes out yesterday. You could almost see the lad's mind whirring over as he stood at the end of his run-up. He just didn't know what to do, whether to just smash it or try and place it, and ended up not really doing either. So, yeah, he's been absolutely tremendous ever since he came to Norwich. Obviously, he had a little bit of a sticky start because he'd been out of football for so long. But once he got into gear, he's been absolutely brilliant. And it's not just the saves he makes, it's the way he organises the defence, it's his ability on the ground, because that's an absolute key to the way that we play. You could see that when he was injured and Michael McGovern was playing, because McGovern did a good job in terms of pure goalkeeping, but in terms of passing, he was probably 25-30% as effective as Tim, and we struggled as a result of that in terms of our system.
He was good in midweek against Watford as well, wasn't he, Connor? There was particularly that double save, but he's had another excellent season. He's probably not going to win Player of the Season again, because it's not usual for a goalkeeper to, when a team hopefully has won a title, certainly has won promotion, but overall, his reputation, a bit like Robin says there, is preceding him now, isn't it? When people have to face him with a penalty, they know that he does his homework. They know that he's going to bounce around and be annoying. And, well, we should probably say that there was no doubt about the penalty. Grant Hanley got himself in a muddle, didn't he, and almost ended up rugby tackling their player. But the way that Krul celebrated when he reclaimed the loose ball and roared with it, that was quite the moment. And if Norwich now do go on to lift the trophy the next couple of weeks, I think we'll all remember that moment.
Yeah, big players, big moments. I think back to Rotherham as well, where he did exactly the same, and it was almost a turning point, wasn't it? Norwich had a fairly slow start, and that really, I mean, they would have been 2-0 in that game, would it, by the time he saved that penalty? So crucial moment. And again, those players that you can rely upon to produce those big moments are often key to any success. And like you say, those 93 points, you could probably delve through them and pick out individual contributions through the way. But him in particular, I think, has made some really big saves. And you mentioned Watford. I thought he was probably Norwich's best player by quite a clear way against Watford, produced a number of good saves. And I think what often gets lacked is maybe the concentration element. It's really hard as a goalkeeper when you're watching essentially a team as good as Norwich every week, and then you still have to make sure you're still alert and awake, because you may have 2 shots to save as opposed to 30 or whatever he had in the Premier League last season. That's incredibly difficult to maintain the standards and to maintain the focus. And I think his experience helps, but he's the best goalkeeper in the division. I think that's quite clear. Daniel Farke said it. I think that's probably the view of most Championship fans as well. So it's a really important position, as Robin has stated. It's a really hard position to fill because Norwich place extra demands on what that goalkeeper has to do, and he's not just a decent shot stopper or a penalty saver, penalty killer, if you like. He also commands his area. He's also very vocal. I think that's maybe been lost a little bit because obviously fans haven't been in grounds, but he's so vocal, not necessarily always to his back four either. You can hear him sometimes really barking at Emi Buendia to get back in position. There'll be times where he's praising players for little bits. There'll be time where he's having to go at the referee for a decision that's been made 80 yards up the pitch. So look, you need that from a goalkeeper, and he's such a good character for the group. And I'd echo everything Robin said. He's been brilliant since he arrived at Norwich City, and I guess the fear was that maybe he would have a drop off after that brilliant Premier League campaign, but I don't think that's been the case at all. I think obviously, like you say, he's going to get overlooked for Player of the Season because of Emi Buendia and various others, Grant Hanley, Kenny McLean, Ollie Skip. But certainly, I think when you boil it down, his contributions have been really important.
Yeah, that certainly in terms of rumour mills, I don't think we need to be worrying about goalkeepers. It's just going to be the backup, isn't it? Whether McGovern stays as third choice, and then whether it's Neeland who remains a second, or they feel they can get in a bit of an upgrade to keep pushing Krul hard. But yeah, his personality is great, and that concentration point. 5 minutes after the goal from Kintia, Lyndon Dykes went through, didn't he? And he saved with his feet. And again, it's that timing of the saves. So he's a massive part of things, and you can see with the launch of the special edition kit today. He's at the forefront of that, and you can tell it means something to him. We all know that Tim's a good guy, and that he fits the ethos of things really here at Norwich, doesn't he? So that was, I think, the penalty actually ended up being taken in the 55th minute, and then within 2 minutes, Max Aarons, fittingly flying through the air at the back post, Robin, to turn in a wonderful Kenny McLean cross. And that felt like it clearly meant a lot to the team because they knew how important the goal was, but also for Max, given that his profile is so high, to score a goal like that at the moment, as it was a good finish, I'm sure, as much as the current situation was good, I'm sure his agent was probably punching the air. And in terms of Max's future prospects for if one of those big boys are to come in for him this summer, it probably has just given him a nice little boost. But in terms of a goal, it was lovely, wasn't it?
Oh, it's a fantastic finish. Yeah, I mean, any striker would have been pleased with that. It's so difficult at a narrow angle to get power and precision, and he got both. Absolutely superb finish.
What do you think of Max overall this season? Maybe he hasn't grabbed too many headlines, maybe because he's a known quantity as opposed to 2 years ago. He hasn't quite had as much attention on him, but I think he's even used the word, isn't he? Consistency. That has been a big part of his game.
Yeah. I mean, he really does look the finished product now. 2 years ago, as you say, he was an unknown quantity, and he was given a lot more freedom. Teams now realise that he's absolutely key to the way Norwich play, so they look to shut him down. He's not been able to get forward as much as he did 2 years ago or even last season, but he's changed his game. He's adapted to that. He's a lot more. He's less of a dasher. He's more circumspect. He's quite happy to go backwards, to go forwards, and he's still got the confidence to play his way out of very, very tight situations, which obviously is, from a fan point of view, slightly worrying sometimes. But 9 times out of 10, it works. So yeah, I mean, he really does look a top quality player, and I'm sure that a lot of big clubs are going to be looking at him, and you can understand why.
Yeah, and Daniel Farke sort of said similar on Friday that he needs to go to a top club, really, doesn't he? Because he needs to be playing attacking football. That's where he is best served. And if you're digging into a relegation battle, maybe Max isn't quite your man, because he's not brilliant defensively. He's good, but we all know that it's being progressive that is really his game. QPR get the goal back, Connor, in 71st minute from Dykes, the Scotland international who missed the penalty. Just to look at the stats, Norwich had 58% of possession, 19 shots and 7 on target, compared to 14 shots and 5 on target for QPR. So that emphasises how much of a difficult game this was, really, and how they had to play well to win it. QPR had beaten Brentford, Bournemouth, Watford and Swansea in 2021. They'd won 3 on the spin. They were very much a dangerous opposition, but they looked a lot better. You mentioned Adoma earlier, but also Charlie Austin, when he came on, he did rattle Norwich quite a bit, didn't he?
Yeah, he's just a big physical presence, isn't he? Elbows flying, old-fashioned. Yeah, he's so dominant, I think, aerially and physically, and it was a big test, and it gave QPR a focal point as well. And Norwich really struggled to get out, and there was a real push, I think, from QPR to try and exploit that sort of 10 minutes after he came on. It was a real aerial bombardment that Norwich had to face. He had a couple of headers, I think probably his 2 big chances he was offside for, but it just goes to show he still has that instinct, doesn't he? And you can see why he's played in the Premier League for so long and been considered for England. He might even have an England cap or 2. You can see why with the quality that he has at this level. But equally, again, we talk about sort of moments in games and the way games sort of ebb and flow. Norwich responded to that, and they rode that period out. Good teams managed to do that, and then when they did get up the pitch, they made sure that they made it count by getting that crucial 3rd goal. And from there, really, all of QPR's momentum was sucked out of the game. So, yeah, you have to give credit, I think, for Mark Warburton, because those changes. Adoma on the right as well caused real havoc, I think, for Xavi Quinty, and we spoke about maybe his defensive struggles. I think that was highlighted maybe more in the second half when Adoma came on, and it just felt like every cross was coming from that side, to be honest. But Norwich rode the storm, they got up the pitch, and then they made their quality count again, and that's what good teams do. They're able to sit in and ride through those periods and come through them. So they deserve credit, I think, for the response they gave that in-game, but that was probably driven as well by a bit more stability. We saw Sorensen come on, and he sort of asserts calm, I think, when he comes onto the pitch. Norwich had to change their shape a little bit in midfield as well. Kenny McLean was then asked to push on a little bit. So a combination of tweaks and a good response, but it helped them get the 3rd goal that killed the game, and that's what you need to do, particularly away from home, because there's a bit more expectation on the, sort of the home team to come out and have a go when they are behind, and QPR did that, and it was always going to be about how Norwich stood up to it, and I think they stood up to it pretty well in the whole.
Yeah, Sorensen had come on, hadn't he, and just to steady things. We haven't mentioned, before that goal went in, Robin, there was an almost remarkable miss from Teemu Pukki, who I just couldn't believe that he missed. It was really lovely play from Skip, Dowell and Cantwell. Dowell plays him clean through. And it's funny with Teemu, he's admitted it quite openly, really, that he should have scored a lot more goals this season, which is mad when you think he's on 25 already. But from watching it from afar, could you believe he'd actually put it wide?
Well, no, it was a bad miss, but, I think as a striker, you actually don't really enjoy those sort of chances. You prefer the instinctive ones, because the problem is you have so much time to think about what you're going to do that you can end up, doing what Dykes did with the penalty, really. You second guess yourself. And I think that's what happened with Teemu. He just couldn't make his mind up what he was going to do, and ended up making a bit of a hash of it, which is unusual, but at the end of the day, if strikers took all the chances, they'd be scoring 50, 60, 70 goals a season.
Yeah, it's funny with Pukki. He quite often, when he just is instinctive, it's when it's better for him. When he's got a bit of time to think, he sometimes ends up flapping at things, doesn't he? But yeah, he probably should have been pushing even Ivan Toney for the Golden Boot a lot harder. And remarkable to think that he could have surpassed the 29 league goals he scored 2 years ago. But as Connor said, they got the job done. Any pretty simple 14th goal of the season. But again, we've got to give a bit of love to Kenny McLean, haven't we? Because not only won the ball back and quickly exchanged passes with Cantwell, but perfect pass, and he probably isn't going to be in contention for the top 3 for player of the season, I wouldn't have thought, but he has been a massive part of things this season, hasn't he, Robin?
Oh yeah. I mean, he's Mr. Consistency, isn't he? He took a long while to win over sections of the crowd. I think it's difficult for any midfielder to come into Norwich when you've got Emi Buendia in there, because he's the yardstick that everybody measures you against, and you know, he's a wonderful flair player. Kenny isn't a flair player, although he's a lot more skillful than people sometimes give him credit for. I think he reads the game very well. He's got a great left foot. He's always likely to pitch in with a goal now and again. But he's had a fair number of assists, I would think, over the course of the season. And the partnership between him and Skip has obviously been instrumental in City's dominance of the Championship.
Yeah, and Connor, just finally on the game, you spoke to Kenny after the match, didn't you, at Loftus Road, or the Kian Prince Stadium, as it's actually properly called, isn't it? The Kian Prince Foundation Stadium, which is a nice community initiative. QPR, a really good community club, actually, in a lot of ways, the stuff that they do. But Kenny, yes, as Robin says, an integral part of things this season. There was also that run in the first half, wasn't there, where he sort of surged past everyone, and then Dowell had a deflected shot save. But what was his sort of vibe after the game? Had he shaken off the hangover?
Just about. I think he was pretty good, pretty reflective. I asked him mainly on sort of what the week's been like, because Norwich have been in the rare position of having a couple of defeats, and how important it was that they kind of responded to that at Loftus Road, or the Kian Prince Foundation Stadium rather, and he made it pretty clear that they'd worked hard. They'd had to sort of knuckle down again, maybe he kind of hinted at, but because there were no excuses, they couldn't say this time that they were celebrating too hard and they didn't have enough time to prepare or anything like that. It was kind of an opportunity for them to put it right, and he said how sort of disappointed they were that they didn't or can't now reach 100 points, but equally it's all about the title, isn't it? And particularly for a group and a coach as well in Daniel Farke that has such high standards, I think that there will be some regrets in that dressing room, maybe about the last 2 fixtures, but he was very keen to say that they didn't dwell on it. They spoke about the issues, they addressed them, and I think he used a phrase where he just sort of said those and then said, that's us, that's what we do, and that's why we have the mentality we have. And that was a really nice bit of insight as well. So yeah, I think he said to Chris Gorham that he's going to try and climb onto the balcony at City Hall even if there's no one there. So that might be something to watch in the weeks ahead.
Yes, someone at the City Council needs to get the mayor's hat down to Carrow Road on Saturday, just in case, don't they? Or up at Barnsley or something. But it sounds like if they win it, that they won't get the trophy until they're at Oakwell anyway, which sounds like it's EFL protocol for it to be on the final day, which is a little bit of a shame. But the big thing would just be get it done against Reading at home at Carrow Road on home turf. Then you've got another week to have a good old piss up and enjoy yourself and really celebrate again and make the most of the moment, because it would also mean the club record being broken, wouldn't it? It would be up to 96 points. Okay, they can't get 100 now, but very, very few teams do. And it's just about putting the cherry on top. Right, let's finish this week's pod then, Robin. As we've got you on in the wake of all the Super League fuss, which has been a disgrace, a laughable disgrace in a lot of ways. It's quite comforting to hear people who are billionaires, who supposedly are so wise in what they manage to do in life, act completely incompetently. But to start with, just describe the Canaries Trust to us as if, just for our listeners who may not have come across the Trust before, on its most basic level, what is the work that the Trust does with the club? Okay,
well, I mean, we have a memorandum of understanding with the club, which is basically an agreement that they'll share information with us. There's confidentiality agreements and so on in certain respects. But we have a quarterly meeting with Ben Kensel and other senior officials to talk through issues that matter to our members. But we also raise money and buy shares in the club, which are then held in trust for the fans. And as a result of what we've done over the last 5 years, the fans of Norwich City are now the 12th largest shareholder in the club, which is vitally important. I think in the context of what's happened over the last week, people are really switching on to the fact that the biggest say and the biggest stake that fans have in a club, the better, because fans need to be listened to. They are the lifeblood of football, and obviously we now have a fan-led review from the government, which has been announced this week, which they've been dragging their feet on for ages. It's amazing how things like the Super League concentrate the mind. So we'll be looking to contribute to that, obviously, as well. But we do lots of other things. We've got a women in football section, which is looking at promoting the women's game in general, and obviously working with the Norwich ladies team. We work with the Football Supporters Association on things like Kick It Out, anti-racism, anti-homophobia. We've been very active on safe standing and wider football politics, really. But the relationship with the club is key to that, and it hasn't always been as good as it is now. Certainly when Jez Moxey was here, it wasn't very good at all. But we've been very lucky. I mean, Ed Balls moved things forward when he was chairman. Steve Stone did a great job as well, and Ben, Zoe, and Stuart have taken it even further. So we feel very, very honoured to have the relationship we do, and hopefully that's resulting in benefits for the fans. We've been involved in assessments of the different stands at Carrow Road, looking at things that work well and don't work well. Some of it is pretty mundane stuff, like the number of ladies' toilets and things like that. But some of it is rather more important. For example, having helplines for people who suffer sexist, racist, homophobic abuse, and obviously, the safe standing thing is a big issue as well. I mean, Glenn Bate, who's a member of the trust board, has worked very, very closely with the club on ground safety, getting fans back post-COVID, and so on. So there's a huge amount of work going on, and it's all being done by volunteers who give it their time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we know how hard you guys work, and I think most Norwich fans are aware of it. But that is nice that officially the fans are the 12th man of the club at the moment. So you'll have to be careful about moving up to 11th place. But I'll come back to you in just a minute, Robin, about the sort of crazy week you guys have had in terms of the Super League. But Connor, what's your sort of take been on it? I mean, I think it's widespread agreement that it was a complete joke and a disgrace, and the anti-competitive element of it was just complete. I described it on Twitter as it's like football treason, isn't it? It's betraying the heart of football. And what's been really interesting, as Robin mentions, the fan-led review, which is going to happen. And do you think that maybe we can look to Germany and the way that fans have retained a stake in the game over there? And really, I suppose this is the thing that has finally, hopefully, kicked things into action, because none of this is particularly new. We've known about a lot of these issues in football and the finances in football for a long time. So it is well past time that something changes, isn't it?
Yeah, and let's be crystal clear. This will come back in a different form if nothing changes. It won't be the Super League or Project Big Picture. It will be something else. The fact we've had two of these this season, I think, illustrates their intentions. That everyone's known for a long, long time that those top six clubs have a desire to break the system to go and earn more money elsewhere, and if there's an opportunity to do that again, they will do it. I'm not buying into the fact that it was out of their good heart and stuff that they turned back. It was because of supporter pressure. It wasn't because they woke up or trains were leaving the station. They all made a decision to go and make more money and to try and I think Gary Neville used the word attempted murder on English football. It did feel like that. And I was speaking to someone the other day and they said if you sat in one of those Premier League meetings, it wouldn't surprise you at all that this has happened, because some officials at those top clubs can't understand why they're even playing teams like Norwich, let alone why Norwich get money out of it. So I've been through a range of emotions this week. I think it started off, like most people, with just pure anger, and then it went to sadness, and then I think it went to real hope when you saw the supporters sort of coming together, the protests that we've seen, and just how universal it was with people rallying around it. But you're right, Dave, it can't end here. It can't just be a defeat of the Super League and we go on as things are. There does need to be change. There does need to be a look to implement certain policies that are going to improve the future of the game and safeguard it from stuff like this happening again. Punishments aren't going to be enough. These top 6 clubs are going to come back with something new, and everyone needs to be prepared for that. And that's why this fan-led review that Robin spoke about is so important. But equally, there needs to be changes on top of that. There needs to be a look at getting some more fan representation in the game. There needs to be a look at getting some diversity of thought around the table, rather than just executives of those 6 clubs that all get to sit on committees because of the title they have. Football needs to change, and I don't think anyone should kid themselves that the way it operates now is sustainable in the long term, because it gives power to the top 6 and everyone else is left scrapping around without a voice. And equally, even though the Super League has been defeated, and the anti-competitiveness of that, and the no relegation, which seems to be a concept that obviously American sport doesn't understand. A lot of these clubs seem to be owned by American owners. They can't get their head around the concept of relegation. It's not something they have. But equally, like you say, there does need to be a look to get fans involved, to give them more of a say, and to ensure that this doesn't happen again. But I think we should all be really encouraged by what's happened. But equally, we can't forget what was attempted here, and it's not going to be something I think that fans of those clubs forget. But equally, the clubs of the fans elsewhere, and as someone, of course, who reports on a club that's about to join the other 14, so to speak, I just think it's incredibly sad the way that everything's panned out this week. But I'm hopeful that it will spark the change that needs to happen in the game.
Yeah, now I'm not going to go too much deeper into the Super League now. I want to keep this pretty Norwich focused in terms of the discussion, because it's everywhere, isn't it? I am a little bit sick of listening to it on every other podcast and every radio show at the moment. But it is going to be fascinating to see how it moves forward in terms of punishments and things like that. But there is always a Norfolk angle, of course. That's what the EDP has lived by for over 140 years or whatever it is. I had a chap called Ben Curtis message me on Twitter, who lives down in London, is a big Norwich fan. He decided to go down to the protests outside Stamford Bridge on Tuesday night, and he had a sign that he'd made which said, "Football belongs to us," underlined, "not you," and "you" in red letters. And that the picture of him holding that banner went around the world, as quite a few of them did. I saw there was a funny one, someone saying "cold Tuesday nights at Stoke are ours," or something like those lines. But his picture was on the Financial Times, the Washington Post, Bloomberg News. It travelled all around the world. So well done to Ben for sort of ensuring Norwich fans have a voice in it, and not at all surprising. And as you say, Connor, just typical that this happens literally the day after Norwich are promoted, and all of a sudden we're scrambling around wondering whether the big 6 are even going to be in the Premier League. But thankfully it looks like we are. But to sort of bring the discussion to a close, Robin, the Trust this week have seen a lot of interest, haven't they, on the back of this, and also could you maybe put into perspective that Norwich do have this fan involvement from the Trust, the 12th biggest ownership. How common is that across the board? I think just off the top of my head, Swansea have some fans involved on the board and things like that. But I think I'm right in saying there's not loads of clubs that have fans involved at a decent level.
No, there aren't. And I regularly get contacted by people at other clubs who are looking to try to negotiate memorandums of association with their clubs to give them a better platform to work from. And a lot of clubs just don't want to know. So yeah, we're in a very, very fortunate position, which is fantastic, and it's important that we use that for the benefit of the fans.
Mm. And your busy week, you've had quite a few quite a bit of fresh interest.
Yeah. I mean, normally we pick up a few new members each month. This week, in the course of 48 hours, we got 96 new members, several of them lost members, and 5 lapsed members rejoining. And it's still going on, and long may it continue, because the bigger voice that we have, the more effective we are, and the more we can do for fans. But yeah, there's an awful lot of people who said, "Oh yeah, I've been meaning to join the trust for ages," and again, it's the sort of event that concentrates the mind. So we're great. It's great to have these people on board, and we look forward to serving them in the future.
It's great to see. The only part of it, I mean, it's fantastic to see the response that's been throughout football. The one little part of me in the back of my mind wishes that people were as passionate about some of the perhaps even more serious things in life, in terms of the NHS and various political issues and stuff like that. But that's a battle for another day. Thank you very much, chaps. That was really interesting. Robin, thank you so much for that insight. Thank you very much for listening to this week's show. We'll of course keep the pod going throughout this summer, and we'll have that game on Saturday against Reading. We'll bring you all of that from at PinkUn.com. Of course, the club have publicised that they will be joining this football-wide blackout of social media across the weekend. We haven't had a chance to fully discuss how we'll approach that yet, but I would imagine we'll probably be following suit with something similar. It will probably come down to our own personal choices, but that's going to be a big issue, which we'll discuss more as the week goes on, as well as social media companies have got to do something to stop all this ridiculous abuse that not just footballers are getting, but normal people and other famous people as well. So there's a lot going on in the world at the moment, but thank you very much for giving us 45 minutes or so of your time, and we will catch up with you very soon.